right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Amir's Anecdotes. Today, I have a very special guest, Steve. Steve, it's good to meet you. Thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Amir. It's great to have this conversation with you. We were just talking a little bit before, and I was saying it's interesting that most of your other guests that you've had on the show have been, long prior standing relationships that you have. And I'm someone that we just met briefly one time in a group setting. So I'm excited to learn more about you and also for you to learn more about me.
Yeah, I literally just met Steve at a coffee shop, and I was like, "Hey, you sound like you're bad with money. Let's have you on the podcast." So Steve, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about you? Like, who are you, and what do you do for a living?
Cool. So my name's Steve DeAngelis. I'm the owner of MMP Creations, which is a content agency here in Huntington on Long Island. And we're working with wellness, retail, and on-site service businesses to help people grab attention, turn that into opportunity, and to really tell their story in a more effective way using the tool of social media.
Cool. So if I had called you before I started this podcast, it probably would have a much higher production quality and value.
Potentially. There's something we can do about that right now, but we'll talk.
All right, we'll talk after. To the guy that edits my podcast, I love you, buddy.
Sorry, I won't come after your joke.
No, it's fine. So Steve, so you have this production company. When did you start it?
So we started right about the end of 2021. So like November 2021.
Wow. Okay. So you're starting your business, but you're not like 19 years old, or this is like all you've ever done. So what did you do before you started this company?
Yeah. So thanks for pointing that out. I'm not 19 years old. I'll be turning 30 in a couple of weeks. So
nice.
A big 3-0. I prior to this, straight out of college, I worked for a marketing agency. And then I started getting really into event production, audio production, and a lot of video production as well. And so all these skills kind of melded together. I was one of the founders of a network of creative individuals out here on the island called Movers, which is still up and running today, but me and with some other friends. And as a part of that group, we started a music festival here on Long Island in 2019 that is still to this day going on every summer at Salt Shack. If you're around, I believe early September this year, they'll have it at Salt Shack at Cedar Beach. It's called Stat Fest.
Cool. Oh, I've never heard of this.
Yeah, so it was that was a fun endeavor for us in that we took our collective skills of event production. We had a lot of artists and musicians in our community and brought all the skills of these individuals together to create a music festival. And then we went beyond our network to go get artists from around the world and all over the country to perform at this festival. It was September 7th, 2019 in Farmingdale is where we had it. And from there, we just started, we had 1,500 people show up to that event, which was our first ever event. And we did that mostly through the power of video production, social media. And
that's incredible.
Not in an interesting, like we weren't doing anything mind-blowing. We were just really good at telling a story. And I had great partners and creative people around us that were always thinking of ideas to grab attention and to bring people in. And we started doing that for other people. And then when the pandemic hit and all these different things happened, the music festival slowed down. We had to take a year off in 2020. And we were looking for ways to make money and things to do. So I started to work with businesses a little bit. And then at the end of 2021, split off from the organization I was with to kind of start my own content agency.
Nice. That's really impressive.
Yeah. So a lot of smaller gigs in there in between, lots of weekends worked doing, sound for wedding bands, weddings all weekend long. A lot of, like marketing conferences that I was doing sound for or event production for at off-Broadway theaters in Manhattan. Learned a lot of different things. And I think that's, as with anyone, everyone's unique skills and individual things generally come together in, the business that they start.
Wow. That's really cool. So you took like all that experience you took and just kind of did a bunch of different things. It's almost like you were just getting your reps in and really doing that strength training to get you to where you are now.
Yeah, it was like college wasn't college. That was college. The
Right.
4 years
Right.
after college was definitely more. And I think that probably goes to anyone. I didn't have a prescribed path, like an accountant, like my wife's an accountant. Out of school, she was like, I'm going to get this internship, I'm going to get this job, I'm going to work here for 2 years, and I'm going to move up the ladder. But I did the same thing in my own way.
Yeah. Did you go to college though?
I did. Yeah, I went to Penn State.
Okay. So you went and paid to go to college, and then you're like, that's useless.
That
And then you
didn't.
started
Yeah.
getting people to pay you to get your real education.
Yep, pretty much.
That's really cool. Good for you. So it's you were doing that marketing agency thing, and it sounds like you did that until you were about, what, 25 years old, give or take?
Yeah, I think I worked. So I did an internship at a marketing agency this summer and like fall after college. And then I got a job, and I held that job for maybe 1 year. So I was maybe 23 or 24 when I stopped working for other people.
Got it. And then you and your buddy started doing some of that like sound editing, video editing kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And you parlayed that into hosting your own music concert kind of thing. And then now you let go of that, it sounds like. And now you have your own production company.
You talk about me making poor financial decisions. That music festival was definitely one of them. Well, it's great. We had 1,500 people show up, but we spent a lot of money. We learned a lot of lessons with that, and it took a couple of years before we had our first profit.
Wow. So before we get into that, just so we can kind of contextualize you as a person, what are all of the different ways that you would identify yourself?
It's interesting. I guess in line with the conversation, it depends on how I'm doing and how I'm feeling on any given day, right? You mentioned it earlier. There's people, when they get in a bad spot, generally have a lot of negative self-talk, a lot of doubt that creeps in, or imposter syndrome, if you believe in that. And so that sometimes creeps its way in. But most of the time, I view myself as, first and foremost, I'm a husband. I have...
Congratulations, or
Yep.
I'm sorry, depending on how that's going.
It's going very great.
Okay, good.
We're a year in here, but things are going great.
Okay, good.
we let's see, what else am I? I'm a huge sports fan. I think this goes to kind of my worldview in general. I'm a weird hybrid of the things that I enjoy. I enjoy screaming my head off at a Penn State football game, and being part of 100,000 people dressed in white screaming at a football field. But I also enjoy a Broadway show and a musical. And I think the connecting piece between that is I like to be part of the collective. I like to be part of something greater than myself. And I find that in sports, I find that in theater, I find that in the day-to-day that I'm doing in my business with, networking groups and organizations and business owners like yourself. So I connect with people on that level. And I often think of, I had this conversation with my editor a couple months ago. It was like, hey man, do you think of music in terms of like a soundtrack for a movie? No, I don't. Like, I think that's weird that you do. And so,
No,
but
I think like that every time.
Playlists of music on my phone and in my Spotify that are like around a certain feeling or around a certain I imagine myself like walking through the city with my headphones on while I'm listening to this music.
So there's a Spotify playlist called Walk Like a Badass that I listen to all the time. It's incredible. It's really good.
Walk Like a Badass.
So I listen to that, like if I'm walking around New York City, I am listening to that, and I feel like I'm in like the exposition shot of like the next Matrix movie. Like I'm the one walking down the street, and like everyone around me is in the black suit, like I'm fading into the crowd. It's awesome.
They're all NPCs. I'm very much looking forward to listening to this place.
But so it sounds like you like being the NPC. You want to be the guy in a crowd. Now, on some level, is that because you can kind of fade into the crowd a little bit? Or is it a little bit of a laziness? Because the things that you describe you really like, you don't have to actually do anything. The performers on Broadway are doing all the work, and the football players are doing all the work. You're just watching.
Well, I enjoy those things. That's what I do to to get away, right? Those are my escapes. But in that escape, it's very active, I think. And then,
So maybe it's like the reverse. Maybe as a business owner, you are always the main character and you like as your hobbies to then go be an NPC for a little bit.
certainly, I think that lines up. And that goes back to your initial question, which is like, how do you view yourself? Back in college, I was part of this organization that raised money for pediatric cancer. And in this group, it was the group that I was in was called Special Events. So we were in charge of organizing some special fundraising events, and I was basically just a volunteer helping people out. And for one of the events, it was like a dance competition, right? So everyone had to put together a routine, and I was late to go meet up with my team to practice this thing. And while I'm on the phone with my friend who's in the group, and I'm saying, I'm on my way, I'll be there in 10 minutes. And she's like, good, you got to get here because nothing's getting done.
Yeah.
And I heard her like put the phone down and be like, don't worry, Steve's coming. Like things are we're going to get moving once he gets here. And she hung up the phone. And like, that's something that has always stuck with me, in that I do see myself as someone who gets things done, who gets the ball moving at least. When people are stuck, I tend to be that person who is like, all right, let's get moving. How can we get back?
That sounds like it was a core memory for you.
Yeah, it is something that I think about often.
So you are a music lover, you're a sports lover, you like to oscillate between being that main character and that NPC, you're a husband, you are, I presume, a son to your parents, you're an entrepreneur, so you're a lot of different things. Now, as you are that multifaceted person who's had all these different life experiences, as you think back on the various life experiences you've had, what is the most stressful financial position you've ever found yourself in?
Well, I think it would come shortly after starting my business in 2021. So I started my business while I was working and living in Astoria. I didn't move out here to Huntington until April of 2022. So my wife and I moved out here, my fiance at the time, in 2022, and got our house here. We started to settle down, I guess, in a way, or build some roots in this neighborhood. And then I moved into an office in the Village in Huntington with a friend of mine who already has a great agency. I'll shout him out. His name is Dean DiCarlo. He's the owner of Mission Disrupt, which is a great web and paid social agency. And I was talking to him about wanting to have a space and wanting to invest in a team and do all these things. And I jumped headfirst into that. That was September of 2022. And so in September, I took on 2 full-time employees and an office expense, and did not have a ton of money kind of saved up to do so, right?
It sounds like you might have jumped the gun a little bit on hiring staff.
100%. But I needed them. I don't know if I did. Looking back, I don't know if I would change doing that, because I needed those people who were better than me at those specific skills to fulfill the work that I sold to a couple of clients. And sure, I could have paid them more as like gig workers or part-time people. But I made the decision to kind of forego paying myself to pay them and to really go all in. And that September, I basically doubled our business in a short period of time, which it wasn't like I had $1 million business. And
Listen, going from 1 to 2 is a double, man.
Right, exactly. So I went from like 4 clients to 8 clients.
That's still good.
That period of time, in maybe a month or two, and didn't really have to skip out on paying myself too much for those months. So got us to a point where it was sustainable with the 3 of us.
That's great. And kudos to your wife for, like, I presume, supporting you through that very stressful endeavor.
Oh yeah, she's literally the reason why I can go out here and take these risks, right?
Right.
And
yeah.
She's been a major supporter of mine to allow me to mess up to make mistakes, and then also to succeed and find myself and be the best version of myself.
Yeah, there's a natural like masculine inherent element of like taking those risks, whether it's physical risk or entrepreneurial risk. Someone told me that like if women were the dominant workforce, we wouldn't need OSHA. It's only because men are the ones working that we need to have all these like safety requirements.
That's funny. Yeah, I was listening to a podcast recently where they were talking about men that aren't in relationships tend to fare worse in lifespan because they inherently take more risks and they don't have a partner to stop them or to tell them that it's a bad idea.
Married men live like I think 10 years longer on average or something like that. So you're in this really stressful position. You've got this company. You didn't have a lot of financial runway. You hired some staff. You're very early stage. You only have 4 clients. So let's throw some numbers out here in the interest of transparency for the audience, right? So what kind of runway are you working with? Like, what do you have in the pot to run your business?
I'm working with maybe 2 months runway of to pay the 2 people that I brought on.
Wow. So is that 20 grand, 30 grand? What, can you give me a ballpark?
Oh, no, much less. Maybe like 12 grand.
You have 12 grand. You got 2 employees that you've promised these salaries to. Do they realize how dire their employment is?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I haven't.
Okay. Okay. So you got 12 grand in the bank. You got to pay salaries to these people that you've hired. Things are looking grim. How do you solve this problem? What are the next steps you took?
I mean, the next steps I took were go out there and start to sell, start to build relationships, and find people that we could help.
When you were doing that, there must have been an element there where you are like stressed beyond all else, and the negative self-talk starting. It's going on in your head that you're gonna fail, and you probably needed a push. I'm sure your wife was instrumental in that. But what were the ways in which you thought of yourself as uniquely facing a problem? Because it doesn't sound like you were like, hey, I'm in this problem. Surely there exists someone that can help me solve this problem.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't sound like you did that. You just grinded the axe, right? Which is fine. But there are, as a licensed financial advisor, there is a million other things you could have done, right? Like you could have taken out a small business loan to seed your business, right? You could have, done your payroll differently, right? You could have developed infrastructure in your business a certain way. You could have paid for a lead generation program, right? You could have gotten investors involved and split off some equity of your business or taken on additional partners for some money. Like there's a million other ways that you could have gone about this instead of just grinding the axe. Did any of those come to mind, or like why didn't any of that come to mind?
It didn't come to mind. And why it didn't was because I had already, I think the situation was unique in my head because I had chosen to do it, right? I jumped in and said, I want to hire these people and go all in. So when I made that commitment, I knew what I was getting into, and I knew I had a plan for going in and getting more money, which was just grinding the axe, right? It was just going and doing more of what we were already doing that we were finding some success with. And so I didn't think about those other avenues for how I could make it work for myself, as far as like taking on debt or going with a line of credit, things like that. And that's something that I would have done potentially different. Having known all the options.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's kind of what the show is all about, right? Is like in everyone's head, I think their problems are very unique or it's like their own fault. But there are other options, and seeking out that professional guidance, whether it's from a business coach or a mentor or a financial advisor or an attorney, is usually the better route. But there's this like uniqueness, I think, when people are in crisis. They think their problem is so unique, and it sounds like you did as well, that there did not exist another solution or another way or a professional that could help you. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, which in a way, for maybe my personality type, was a good thing. It was
Right.
like I was
Right.
singularly focused, right? I'm a person who tends to get analysis paralysis. There's too many different options going on around me. I tend to sit and think about them, but when there's only one way forward, um, I'm pretty good at taking action.
Got it. And now, so when you were at that point where you had 2 months of salary for your staff, how long ago was that?
That was September of 2022.
September 2022. So it's now on
Almost
the
2 years.
film date, not the release date. We're filming this in July of 2024. So it's been just shy of 2 years. And then how's your business now? Like, how many months of salary do you have for your staff if they listen to this?
Oh, I don't know. At least 6.
Nice. Okay, that's a significant improvement. And how's the business now?
I mean, things are going well. We definitely had an iffy June, a slower June, we'll call it. But interestingly enough, in the last couple of weeks, things pick up, and I get a few random leads reaching out to me that I hadn't anticipated or that weren't in my pipeline. So things are trending in a positive direction.
Good for you. That's great. So it doesn't sound like the journey's over. It really sounds like it's kind of still just beginning for you. So I'm excited to see kind of where you're going to go from here and what your next steps are going to be. But what is kind of like the biggest lesson I think you learned from that experience of having that deep level of stress?
Resilience, in being a kind of like a learned trait. In that there's always going to be ups and downs in business and in entrepreneurship. In starting something, there's always going to be a quiet July or quiet June and then a busy July to follow it up afterwards. And what I've learned is to not let the lows get too low, or let myself get too low in those moments, because I do tend to let it get to my head and be like, man, that sucks. If you cannot let those get too low, or shorten the windows that the down periods are, that tends to set you up for more success, in my experience, for myself.
Sure. So anyone who's listening to this and is really resonating with your story, what tips or tricks or advice would you offer to shorten those windows?
Find other people who are doing it. One of the greatest tools that I learned in the last maybe year or two is that when you have a group of people that you can turn to who are also, in a similar position, you realize that really what this podcast goal is that your mistakes or your situation is not that unique. And, I went to a lunch meeting about a month and a half ago at this point, and I was like, man, we're good right now. Everything's fine. Like, everything's fine. But I feel like I'm stuck. Like, I can't get through that next ceiling or that next wall. And I asked the group, it was just like, do I have to take back some responsibilities from people to, because I feel like we can improve in these certain ways. Like, I know the content that we're creating can be better. And they were all just like, we've all been there with our businesses. And a lot of these people have been in business 10, 15, 20 years, built multiple businesses, sold them. I was in a great room. And to realize that, I was like, man, I just have this feeling that it's stuck there. And with other people who were, multi-million-dollar businesses in the room saying, oh yeah, I still feel that. Like, it's never going to go away.
Right.
Made me realize
That's good to hear.
I'm not unique. And that feeling of like, oh, it could go away at any point in time, is something that people in my position are always going to feel. And so you kind of have to get comfortable with that. But to go back to the point of the question, finding those people has been super important for me, because it's allowed me to make that realization and to learn from other people's mistakes, or lean on them to say, hey, when you were in this position 5 years ago, what did you do? And I'm lucky that I share an office with someone who is in my business, who is maybe 5-6 years ahead of me in terms of how long they've been in business, who has made these mistakes or learned these lessons before I have, that I can lean on any day. I can pick up the phone and call him right now, because I know Dean is going to listen to the mistakes that I've made or the situation that I'm in and say, yeah, this is how I solved that. And not that you have to do it this way, but this is what I did. And if you can find tons of people or a group of people who you can lean on to do that with, you're going to be pretty well covered.
Yeah, I think, you're spot on, right? Like we've now done a couple of episodes of the podcast, and like every single time it's having that support system. It's having other people around you and knowing that you're not alone, and also don't be alone, right? That's probably the worst thing you can do. But it's actually like one of the most comforting things, and it's learning to find comfort in knowing that you are not unique. And I think a lot of people want to be unique, right? And it's in that uniqueness that they've isolated themselves and they've made the problem worse. And if you hear the sentence, you are not unique, and you find immense comfort in that, and you learn to find comfort in that, I think that's how you can really, truly not be alone, and then make better decisions and kind of crawl out of any problem.
I agree with you. There's someone before you, unless you're, Elon Musk or one of these guys who's inventing.
Even Elon Musk, man. Come on. There's other people. He didn't invent the Tesla cars. He bought the company from two other guys that actually created that electric car. And also his dad owned like an emerald mine in South Africa.
So even if you're Elon Musk, you're not one of one.
Right, exactly. Now his son with that name that I can't pronounce, maybe that's a one of one.
A bunch of symbols, right? That's his name.
Yeah. That's great. So, Steve, thank you so much for kind of being on the show. If anyone wants to get in touch with you, how should they do it?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. I think your insight and the way that you approached the conversation was really unique, and feel like a conversation that I haven't heard a lot of people have. So I commend you and thank you for having that conversation and sparking it. It was really cool. I think I even learned a little bit about myself today, the psyche behind, why I like doing the things that I do as my getaways. But yeah, the way people can get in touch with us is our website is mmpcreations.com. My Instagram, MMP Creations, on all social media. And I would love to sit down and talk to anyone and see how I can help them, even if it's just by connecting you to someone amazing like Amir.
Great. All right. Thanks, Steve. Thanks for coming on the show today and having some time with us. And we'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks, man.